6:26. It's time for Deep Thoughts. Oftentimes by the time we get to the second half of May, we are well into our rainy season, and we're no longer talking about fire danger. But the tail end of dry season tends to be when fire danger is at its worst here in Southwest Florida, and we're still hanging on to that dry season pattern. So all week long, we've been talking about elevated brush fire risk here in the area. What do we mean when we talk about conditions that lead to fire danger? We look for long-term drought, everything being dried out by not a whole lot of rainfall in recent times, and that's definitely been the case of late here. Relatively low humidity helping to further dry things out, and then strong gusty winds. They help to sort of fan the flames in the fires that do get going. And we've had, again, more or less all three. So with that, fire danger has been pretty high. We've been showing you the Florida Forest Service's Fire Danger Index, and this is what it looks like here today. Very high in Charlotte County and Lee County, high in Collier County, and then moderate in our northern and inland counties, DeSoto, Glades, and Hendry. But why? Why are these different counties so different? Why is the fire risk so much higher in Charlotte County and Lee County than it is, say, in Hendry and Glades County? Well, I think it's important anytime you see an index like this that you know what it is you're looking at, what goes into it. And when I think of what this index is, it's basically showing you what the fuel is like for fires to use if they're able to form. Think of, charcoal that you're putting on your grill. Is that charcoal dried out? Is it wet? Things like that. Can you really get a fire going with the fuel that's out there? In our case, it's sort of the scrub, the brush across Southwest Florida. There's really two factors that go into what produces that index. The relative humidity on any given day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then something called the energy release component, and that really looks at how dry everything is out there, how much energy is sort of stored up in the fuels that could be released if a fire were able to get going. So as far as our relative humidity is concerned, well, today, numbers actually a little bit higher than they've been so far this week. To really maximize that fire danger index, you look for those numbers to be in the 30s, which in a few spots they have been this week. But again, a little bit higher today. That brings that index down at least slightly. And there's your energy release component values. Of note, Lee County is at the highest right now, but that's sort of at odds with the fact that much of Collier County is actually in a moderate drought. Also of note, these numbers are calculated on a 7-day average, so they don't change much from day to day. And that's one of the limitations with this index that we talk about, that we show you. There's other limitations too. In fact, the wind is not factored into that index whatsoever. There's no wind component in the calculation. Again, as it's a 7-day average, there's low to low day-to-day variability, even though the weather does change, each and every day here in Southwest Florida, even if it's subtle sometimes. And there's nothing that speaks to, are there conditions that could get fires going? Like, say, lightning. We know here in Florida, often the worst of the brush fires we see tend to get going from thunderstorms during the late part of dry season. Well, if I were to make my own fire danger index, this is how I would go through doing that. I'd factor in winds, the drought, humidity, and then if there is a threat for lightning. So here's my index for today. Yeah, we have the gusty winds in place. That would be a maximum contribution from that factor. Moderate drought in parts of Southwest Florida. Humidity not terrible, but lower than we'd hope to see this time of year. And then a very low threat of lightning. So for me, we'd be on the medium to high end of the scale. And of course, we're going to keep that fire danger elevated until we get rainy season going. We'll talk about coming up in the next half hour. It just doesn't look like it's going to get going anytime soon. That's it for Deep Thoughts for today. If you have questions for me for future segments, go ahead, send them my way. Send an email, jim.dickey@abc-7.com. Stick around. 30 more minutes, more in the morning coming up after the break.